Right.
Thank you.
What should we talk about? Grand National. Grand National is going to be put back so that you can watch Newcastle just before it starts.
Now, hold on. Isn't this a great example of a scoop ruining the rest of the papers? Now, Marcus Townend in the Mail had this story on the Tuesday morning, and then, because Oliver Sherwood, they'd open up the stable to give this great announcement that was going to happen, the National put back. The hacks cannot bear it when somebody else has scooped them, so the Post have to cover it. But it was a great scoop by Marcus Townend, and consequently it lost all its oomph as far as the rest of the press are concerned, because the grubby reptiles hate following anybody else. Now, whether it's right or wrong, we'll talk about that, but give credit to Marcus Townend. That's what a real scoop's about, and the whole of the press conference totally ruined. Isn't it lovely? I think it's terrific.
And let's face it, as bombshells go, a race being moved back an hour, it doesn't get any more exciting than
but
that.
you're how wrong you are, because it affects... There's 8.9 million viewers who watched it last time. This is the one race that affects everybody virtually in the country. Talking about the nation stopping... Well, talking about the nation stopping for the Melbourne Cup, it certainly stops for the Crabbies Grand National. It does affect... It is absolutely right. So you can argue whether it should be later or not, but moving the time is important in our little world that affects everyone else involved in racing and who loves racing. Of course it is.
Yeah. There you go.
You're totally wrong. You've got no news sense. That's your trouble. You've no news sense, no journalistic integrity. You've got none of it.
No integrity of any kind.
Well, no, how right you are. How right you are.
Anyway.
Oh, dear, you are such full of...
No. It is. But that proves it. You just brush it aside. It doesn't matter. This is virtually the only race that the nation knows
Pete,
about.
For those of us, explain why this matters.
Well, it remains to be seen, doesn't it? I mean,
That's my point. If you had a news sense, you would know that only the outcome of the viewing figures will tell you whether it matters or not.
No, but you've got to
You're
explore...
preempting the news, which is something perhaps you shouldn't do as a news.
Well, in Ireland they moved some of the big races back for an
The
RTE...
Irish viewing figures were so low, they barely didn't exist.
Exactly, but the RTE benefited from it. I'm actually... I think the Grand National should be the last race on the card, like the Breeders' Cup Classic. I know it's difficult for people to get away from Aintree. That's the one downside to it, the traffic and all that sort of thing. But the climax, the whole season, focusing on the Grand National, that's how it should end. You don't have Sinatra singing My Way if he was still alive and it's the middle of the show.
That would be a pull, wouldn't it? Sinatra there.
It's about trying to latch on to this sort of early evening audience as well.
Absolutely right. It should be later than 5:30. I think it should be later than 5:30.
I know you've said that as a castaway comment, but I've no idea why we don't do those kind of things.
Yes.
The singing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've no idea.
Yeah.
The one thing at the Breeders' Cup is the singing national anthem is tremendous. Melbourne Cup, doesn't matter who's singing, even the people who can't sing get up and sing.
And you do cry. The Kentucky Derby, me old Kentucky home far away, you are literally crying. It's fantastic.
It's very emotional.
It is.
Yeah.
It really takes it out
Even
of you.
to those...
I have no idea why we don't do that kind of thing.
But the last race...
said that,
should it be the last race of the meeting?
Yes.
I would have it as the last race,
Yeah.
It's the highlight.
I agree. It all builds up to
last.
But all of that is irrelevant to the story, which is that racing is desperately clawing around for more viewers. That's
it's odd in the sense that this is one race that hasn't really suffered. I mean, viewing figures are holding up, whereas there are a lot of other races and a lot of major races that you would hope were holding their own just aren't.
It would be remiss of racing not to try to maximise the audience. Huge race.
But you wrote about it in the Racing Post this week, didn't you, about the viewing figures and betting being
just
involved?
Generally about Channel 4,
and what were you saying?
Well, it's the most alarming thing. You can argue about whether you think the coverage is good or not, but the fact is the audience is shrinking big time, and that's a huge concern. I don't care what anyone says.
And we've already tried with the Derby to move it back and boost figures, which didn't work at all.
But will it work this time? I mean, they're banking on people coming out of football games and tuning in to the race. There will be, I'm sure there'll be more betting turnover because you've got a longer build-up period.
It will increase it. It all helps for it. If it was later, it would be even better.
The football thing's a red herring, isn't it? There's no one coming out of a football game at 5:15 who is going to get home by 5:30.
Out of the game, no.
But then they used to run the National at half-time anyway.
It does seem like a good idea for them to put it up on the big screen.
I think the football thing, it's more a question of people having bet on football all afternoon. Games are over. You know that people are far more likely to have a bet when they know how much money they've got in their pocket. If they've had their football lackers, they won a few quid or they haven't lost too much, then they're far more likely to bet than if they don't know what's happening in the football.
I think it's all credit to Aintree. and all credit to the BHAB, they want to boost the viewing figures. Clearly, the later you're on, it's obvious that the viewing figures get bigger later on in the evening.
Yeah.
So you could say it should be later. So they're doing the right thing, and they're trying to boost the figures, and they've held up fantastically well for Channel 4. 8.9 million is a fantastic figure they got last year.
But in some ways, though, isn't this a conversation to have after? I mean, at the moment, everyone's just guessing. You're saying they're doing the right thing, the figures will be better. They may well be. But until it happens, isn't it a bit pointless saying they're going to be better?
At least they're trying
Yes.
something, and you never know until it happens. You're always guessing, but
There
at
were
least
some
they're
very
trying
strange
something.
quotes, though, weren't they? Well, Peoples and Officialdom were saying, well, no one knows it's at 4:15. Well, no one knows it's at 5:15 either. It's like no one knows what time the Gold Cup is. It's
I think you're
something
more
anyone knows.
likely to get families together at 5:15. The missus is in from the shops or whatever. The blokes are back from sport. You're likely to get it. I think to me that's what. Nowadays, that's what the race is. You get your wife and your kids around the telly and watch the Grand National and say, this is what you should be watching, and you try to turn them into decent human beings.
And after that, you just make it so fun and so interesting
Absolutely.
that people can't tune off.
Yeah, that's what you've got to do.
But a far more serious problem for racing is that Crabbies are pulling out of the sponsorship. Right, they're doing it this year, and that's it.
Are they? Is that different?
That's different.
Maybe they won't when the viewing figures double.
Well, no, but the thing is, Crabbies are out of their depth. They're a lovely firm, locals and all that sort of thing. But what Aintree were looking for, they were looking for the major, one of the big conglomerates, the Mercedes and all.
Northern Rock.
Be quiet about that. But, so racing is really got a really big problem, and the reason is that the Grand National is toxic as far as any commercial bidder coming in, because it's the equine fatalities that can happen. Now, the last 2 years, fantastic. Beecher's Brook has been levelled and Start's been moved, and they've done a fantastic job, and the birch has been taken out of the fences, which is fantastic PR. The race looks the same. It isn't the same, but it's still got the drama, it's still got the excitement and everything like that.
21st century race.
It is. They've done it right.
Yeah,
but you've got to face it, you're a sponsor, the dread, a couple of horses die. Front pages, televisions around the world, your name is associated with death. So why did they get Crabbies? They tried all their big ones before. And the worst thing about this is the way the bookmakers were treated. It was anyone but bookmakers. They forget what Ladbrokes did in the 1980s, saved the Grand National. Their sponsorship at a crucial time with Bill Davis helped to save the race. But they come in with this...
That was a long time ago.
A long time ago. But to say to bookmakers who sponsor 50% of the sponsorship in this country for racing, anyone but bookmakers for the National, same with Cheltenham. Peter McNeill put out they didn't want bookmakers sponsoring the Gold Cup.
Was soon put back in his
box. Yes, but never. But that is
I don't think that was an official thing.
Not official, no. But that is that the feeling in racing, they despise bookmakers. The rulers of racing, from the aristocrats in the past...
We know all this, though, but it's not just to do with the Grand National, it's to do with all of it.
But it was crucial for the Grand National. They will not have a bookmaker, so where are they going to get a sponsor from when Crabbies go?
That's a good question, because it is a unique problem, the Grand National, in terms of attracting a blue-chip sponsor.
And it shouldn't be, because it's huge
worldwide.
Well,
it is, John, because as you rightly pointed out, a dead horse really just turns the whole thing completely upside down.
And there's and the anti-people are waiting with their machines. They need death. There are people who love animals. They love animals, but they want death. And if they don't get it for the last 2 years, they've had no story, but they are waiting for it.
But that's why it was such a good move of Aintree.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely.
They used to have those huge logs in the middle of them around which to build the birch, and now they've...
I know, it's fantastic. Yeah. But the public don't know it. Horses brush through them much more.
No, in fairness, the public have not deserted the race at all.
No.
Through every bad headline, the public have said, OK, we actually like this. We don't think that there is a problem with this race. We're going to carry on watching it. And hopefully, if you can maximise that audience, the audience of people who are actually quite intelligent and don't fall for the anti-propaganda, hopefully if you can maximise that audience, it'll become a far more saleable product. It's a safer race at the right time of day.
I agree with all of that, but how are we going to get a big sponsor in? Crabbies, very worthy, nothing wrong with it. I'm not criticising them at all, but they are very small beer in what more way? Ginger beer. Ginger beer in more ways than one. How are we going to get a major sponsor? I don't think they're going to be able to get one. They must have tried everybody beforehand. They must have, and nobody. It is toxic. Unbelievable. Our race, the race that we adore,
we know Nick Rust
Yeah.
and his cronies
Yeah.
have got huge sponsors up their sleeves, because
Yes.
otherwise they wouldn't be playing roulette with the bookmakers,
Yes.
would they? So
Well-
we know all these sponsors are there. They're just waiting to be unleashed on us.
Are they? Well, that we
Well,
don't
they must
know.
be. BHA wouldn't be doing what they're doing if they didn't have them all up their sleeve.
But when you think, and I'll tell you, the big race, under big
You'd
race...
assume so, but
yeah,
I think it's an assumption
Rusty
too far.
Yeah.
and all that lot, they've got these big sponsors waiting to
Right,
sponsor
let me ask
racing.
you this.
They must have. Otherwise they wouldn't be doing what they're
Doncaster,
doing.
the Labrets and Ledger.
Naughty, aren't you?
Yeah, but but Doncaster, the Labrets and Ledger. That is under really big threat. The way bookmakers have been treated. Of course, Will Labrets, who have done a terrific job. Whatever you think of bookmakers, and we all hate bookmakers and the magic sign and all that. Look what they've done for the Ledger. They've done a fantastic job for that. William Hill, the Boxing Day, which is a great day. I think the best day's racing of the year, because I hate Christmas with a passion. I loathe it. At least you escape to Kempton and then come back to watch Newcastle beat Everton. So who's going to sponsor the William Hill King George?
That's
These
not
are
so much of an
huge
issue.
problems.
The Grand National is
Yeah,
it's
the
a
Grand
different
National,
thing,
you're
really,
right.
You know?
Yes.
And one of the things that we've seen already is that one of the big bookmakers pulled out of the Tingle Creek on Saturday,
Yes.
and another one stepped in.
Yes.
So I'm not sure that there's going to be this huge financial cost to racing. That
I think at
everyone's
the
going on
moment
about, you know?
the bookmakers are trying to present a united front, but at the end of the
Well,
day,
they can't, can they?
No, at the end of the
Three
day,
have pulled out.
it's about business for them.
Yeah.
That's what we can't lose sight of that. It's about business, and if they see their competitors suddenly nipping into the gap and nipping up the inner and getting these sponsorships that they're not allowed to have, I think that's going to change things.
Well, that's why,
the more
you know,
chinks
You could be
appear.
right. It was the same with the pictures. Do you remember? And then there was
yeah.
one by
no,
one,
we're not
they
gonna do
peeled
that.
them off.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the end, the rights for racing that's went and won it. So here we've got to see more than Bet365, Betfair, and
Sure.
32 Red. Will more than that peel away and make the bookmakers
Bookmakers are
disunited.
no more united than punters.
No.
They're out for themselves, and quite understandably, it's business.